Today, I will talk on postmodernism. The latest theory of postmodernism is very interesting and at the same time mind-blowing. Adam believes that literature is a transaction between a human author and his human reader. By his command of linguistic and literary possibilities, the author actualizes and records in words what he undertakes to signify of human things and actions and matters of human concern. Adam is of the opinion that it is only through our militant use of critical faculties we can confer longer any real benefit from the literary works. Adam feels that the prime aim of his scholarship is to promote uncertainty. He feels that the present anxiety over himself in relation to his past and his present. As Freud says, his present anxiety over himself in relation to his future and his neighbors. His present anxiety over himself in relation to eternity and God. So these three sentences are connected with Freud, Marx and Kierkegaard. According to Auden, poet creates in order to satisfy a desire to determine his own activity. Borrowing Coleridge's contention of primary and secondary imagination, he defines creative art as the poet's irresistible response to the subject. Miller is of the opinion the artist is the man who goes into the empty space between man and God and takes the enormous risk of attempting to create in what vacancy a new fabric of connections between man and the divine power. Among the postmodernists, Karl Shapiro is a distinguished poet and critic. He believes that true poetry springs from the love of personal truth. According to Shapiro, true poetry is poetry of cosmic consciousness, the capacity of the individual consciousness to experience a sense of total unity with nature or the universe or some degree of that experience. Unlike culture poetry, the poetry of cosmic consciousness embraces science and mysticism. Ihab Hassan, a postmodern critic of high caliber, observes that literature is a radically nihilistic and at the same time affirmative as well. To Hassan, the idea of organic form has been a touchstone of value and a cornerstone criticism may derive new vitality from some attention to the unstructured and even random element in literature. Of theory in literary study, he says the aesthetic of the future will have to reckon with Freud, Nietzsche and even Kierkegaard. New critical approach emerged after a lull in the English literary world. Theory and practice started to mingle, such as deconstruction, reception theory, feminism, Marxist criticism, psychoanalysis, post-colonialism, gay and lesbian criticism, etc. Newton says theory is an area of constant debate and confrontation and to have an adequate understanding of it. To have knowledge not merely of the argumentative central or one or two particular standpoints, but also of alternative position, explicit or implicit in conflict with them. The principle of structuralism is a realization of Saussure's dream of general science of sign, semiology. Saussure saw language as the most complex and most characteristic of all systems of experience. Lévi-Strauss called the phenomena structural anthropology. Barthes believed that culture in all its aspect is a language. According to Barthes, language is literature's being. Its very word, the whole of literature, is contained in the act of writing and no longer in those of thinking, portraying, telling or feeling. Language is not just the means of communication in literature, but insofar as one can say literature has a content, language in all its capability is also the content of literature. Would-be semiologists found themselves limited to such micro-languages as the language of traffic signs, the language of fans, ships, signaling systems, and the language of gestures among Trappist monks. Writing on structuralism, Derrida says, structuralism constitutes an adventure of vision, a conversion in the way of putting question to any object. At the same time, Derrida questions the key concepts of structuralism, particularly about sign and structure and its methodology. On the various concepts that Derrida uses in conducting his argument, those of logocentrism and difference are perhaps the most effective as a means of introducing his ideas. Logocentrism is the term he uses to describe all forms and thought which base themselves on some external point of reference, such as the notion of truth. Plato believed that language is subversive to some ideas and intention. This idea is at odds with Saussurean principles that it is language which is primary. Derrida's analysis shows that logocentrism tends to manifest itself in extremely indirect ways further. Derrida is of the opinion that a speech directly expresses a meaning on intention that a speaker has in mind. He calls it phenocentricity. Derrida shows that nothing escapes difference, that there are no inviolate entities, that everything becomes part of what he calls the play of difference. Literature in general and certain works in particular seem to support Derrida's claim about the principle of difference in language. The claim is opposed to the formalist approach. The text may have disunity rather than unity. It may have multiplicities of meaning. The most famous quotation belongs to Derrida, who in his famous book of Grammatology says that there is nothing outside the text. I repeat, he says that there is nothing outside the text. Now I stop here.